Cathy Trost. She's the Vice President of Exhibits and Programs at the Newseum. They have a stunning exhibit on the entire JFK story right now, running through January 5th, 2014. Cathy Trost, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Talk to me about the exhibits and how the media played a very, very unique role in this story.
Sure. To mark this historic year, the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Kennedy, we wanted to look back not only at that tragic moment that shocked the nation, but also his presidency, his life. And we do that through rarely seen artifacts, photos, and videos in the exhibit, as you described. But one of our main goals was to explore it through the lens of how journalists covered the story. And so together, our three exhibits tell a really important story about a unique time not only in America, but in journalism history. Because, as you said, everything changed that day, not only for the country, but for the news media. Television really came of age that weekend. The three television networks stayed on the air for nearly 4 days without commercials or regular programming to cover the tragedy. We became really a TV nation. TV became the primary news for most people, and it really became a time that technology started to change. The whole news business changed in that one impactful weekend.
And so tell us about some of the things that you could see if you go to see this exhibit, which is quite remarkable, actually.
Well, thank you. The main exhibit that explores the assassination through the lens of the journalists who covered it is called 3 Shots Were Fired. And that, of course, is the famous opening words of the UPI bulletin that was the first to alert the world that there had been a shooting in Dallas. And that exhibit does tell the dramatic story of the news media's reporting of the death. We also have an exhibit called Creating Camelot, which features the really, really intimate and extraordinary photographs of Kennedy and his family taken by Jacques Lowe, who was Kennedy's personal photographer. And these images really helped shape Kennedy's image in the press and in the public eye. And then, of course, 1,000 Days is our own museum-produced documentary highlighting Kennedy's presidency and his family life in the White House. And in these exhibits, you can see many things, including the actual home movie camera used by Abraham Zapruder,
wow.
who was the Dallas dressmaker who went out to see the presidential motorcade because he loved the president. And with that camera, he captured the most famous home movie of all time, which is the only camera that did capture the entire assassination. We also showcase artifacts that have never before been publicly seen, including the shirt and the jacket worn by accused assassin Lee Harvey Oswald on the day of the shooting, and the wallet that he was carrying and its contents.
I was sort of surprised. Something that I guess if I knew it, I had forgotten it or I never knew it, is that when Lee Harvey Oswald was buried in a sort of a nondescript grave, they wanted to keep it all very secret and very hush-hush, but a few reporters found out about it. As it turned out, when he was buried, the only people there were a few reporters who became the pallbearers for Lee Harvey Oswald because there simply was nobody else to do it.
Yeah, that's the sad historical fact. In Washington, great pomp and circumstance was happening as leaders of the world converged in D.C. for the burial of President Kennedy at Arlington. But in Texas, Lee Harvey Oswald was being buried with almost no one in attendance, and the only people who were available to be the pallbearers were the reporters.
Many would say that's more than Oswald deserved. Yeah. Let me ask you this, because you said this was the first time really that it became a television nation, and everyone was glued to their television set as the story developed. Now it's normal. Just this year, you think back to the Boston bombing during the Boston Marathon, and we saw that story develop on television as well. And one of the things that struck me at the time was that there was so much misinformation and bad information that came out now. I mean, in our very advanced technological era, we were getting bad information when that story developed. And now I want to go back to the JFK assassination, because 50 years ago, there was a lot of speculation, a lot of bad information, a lot of stuff that was unfounded that was coming out as it developed. And hasn't that fueled a lot of the conspiracy theories that are very active still today?
Well, actually, very few mistakes were made back during the actual coverage of the Kennedy assassination. We look back and we examine some of that period in the exhibit, and it's astonishing that even with primitive technology by today's standards and utter chaos, reporters were very careful, and even the wire service reporting was very measured. I think the second bulletin said something like, he's been wounded, perhaps fatally, perhaps injured. And Cronkite was very careful, and as were the other anchors, not to go on the air with any kind of wild speculation until it had been confirmed by the White House.
Okay, but Cathy Trost is from the museum. I don't want to engage with you because you're not here to debate. But see, to me, a lot. You'll hear conspiracy theorists say, "See, he wasn't really. Why did they hold the announcement of his death until after the priest got there? When some reporters know that he was dead when he arrived at the hospital, but they didn't pronounce him dead until later. Something happened in the hospital room. I mean, these are the wild conspiracies that come out."
I absolutely recognize that I would think a majority of the country does not believe in the Warren Commission's findings that there was a lone shooter and that there were other elements to it. That's a fact. The polls show that. But in our exhibits, we really didn't go there. We don't. Our charge was to really look back at this time and how reporters covered it. So what you say may be right, but I don't have any facts to back it up.
I hear you.
I actually, in looking back at some of the coverage, I was surprised how remarkably accurate the reporting was.
Yeah. All right, Cathy Trost, I appreciate you being here, and I have to say that it really is a great exhibit and very popular. I was there earlier this week in the evening, and you were jammed. So how do people get to this exhibit at the museum? Can they just go down, or should they reserve early online?
Well, I think today in particular, if you can come, today was an important day because we will be marking the actual 50th anniversary today with a public JFK Remembrance Day, where you can see not only the exhibits, but a whole slate of programs and authors and historians and filmmakers showing their documentaries about Kennedy, talking about Kennedy, from James Swanson to Geraldine Würzburg to others, and we'll also be having bagpipers playing the music played at the state funeral of Kennedy at 4:40 this afternoon.
Very cool.
So it's a very wonderful place today to really reflect and remember about one of our most unforgettable presidents and see the exhibits while you're there.
Very cool. Thank you, Cathy Trost, Vice President of Exhibits and Programs at the Newseum. The Newseum, a great place to commemorate this very important day in American history.